Jack sat in the dark corner of the small ship, his eyes fixed on the flickering light of the control panel. The hum of the engines filled the air, steady and strong, a reminder that they were getting closer to their destination. For years, he had heard the same stories as everyone else. Humans were only myths, old tales told in whispers around campfires or in the shadows of war. But Jack knew better. He had been raised by those who remembered the truth, those who carried the blood of warriors. Claire was seated across from him, cleaning the barrel of her rifle. She was calm, her hands moving with precision. She had been in more battles than she cared to count, yet something about this mission made her uneasy. She could see it in Jack's eyes. It wasn't just going into another fight. He was stepping into history. Ethan leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, staring out the small window at the endless stars. He was the youngest of the group, but his skill in tracking and reconnaissance made him invaluable. He didn't speak much, but when he did, people listened. Sophia was at the controls, guiding the ship through the vast emptiness. Her focus never wavered, even as the war zone drew closer. The galaxy had forgotten humans. Over centuries, their name had become a ghost in old records. Most believe they had vanished long before the current wars began. In truth, humans had scattered to distant worlds, hidden, rebuilding, waiting for the day they could return. Now, that day had come. Jack's voice broke the silence. "We're not here just to fight. We're here to show them we still exist." His tone was firm, but the weight behind the words was heavy. Claire nodded, her eyes meeting his. She understood. They all did. The mission was simple on paper. Infiltrate the war zone, find the source of the enemy's power, and disrupt it. But Jack knew there was more to it. Somewhere in the chaos of the fighting, there were others like them, humans who had survived in secret. If they could unite them under one banner, they could change the course of the war. As they drew closer to the edge of the war zone, the first signs of destruction came into view. Cities lay in ruins, their towers shattered and streets burned black. Ships drifted like broken bones in the void, some still glowing from recent battles. Sophia adjusted their course, weaving between debris fields. Claire's voice was quiet but steady. "Look at this place. It's like the world forgot what peace was." Ethan didn't answer, but his jaw tightened. He had seen destruction before, but not on this scale. They approached a small outpost on the outskirts of the war zone. It was half collapsed, its walls riddled with blast marks. Jack motioned for Sophia to land nearby. As the ship settled, they gathered their weapons and gear. The moment the hatch opened, the smell of smoke and ash hit them. The air was heavy, carrying the distant echoes of gunfire. Jack led the way into the outpost, moving quickly through the shadows. Claire covered the rear while Ethan scouted ahead. They found the place nearly deserted, except for a few wounded fighters. Most were too weak to stand, their eyes dull from exhaustion. One of the fighters, a man with a deep scar across his cheek, looked up as Jack approached. "You're not from around here," the man said, his voice hoarse. Jack didn't deny it. Instead, he crouched down and handed the man a water flask. "We came to help," Jack said simply. The man studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Then you're either very brave or very foolish. Either way, we could use you." They stayed long enough to gather information. The enemy's main supply route ran through the ruins of a nearby city. Cutting it off would slow their advance. But more importantly, the man had heard rumors of a hidden stronghold where a queen ruled, a queen who was human. Jack felt his pulse quicken. If it was true, this mission had just become far more important. As they returned to the ship, Jack looked back at the broken outpost. The myth of humans had kept them safe for centuries, hidden in the shadows. But now, in this war zone, they would show the galaxy that humans were real, and they were ready to fight again. The ship's engines roared as Sophia lifted it from the ground, pushing it hard toward the city ruins. The smoke from distant fires stained the horizon, and flashes of light from weapons fire lit the skies like a storm. No one spoke for a while. Each of them was thinking about the next step, about what they would face when they reached the supply route. Jack sat in the co-pilot seat, watching the readings on the console. "We'll have to go in fast," he said. "If they spot us too soon, we won't get close enough to cut them off." Claire nodded from behind him, her rifle resting across her lap. "Once we're on the ground, we split into two groups. Ethan and I will handle the demolition. You and Sophia cover us until we're clear. Ethan checked his pack, making sure every charge was ready. He moved with quiet focus, but his mind kept circling back to the rumor of the Queen. If there was truly a human leader out here, they needed to find her. She could rally more survivors than they could on their own. As they crossed into the outskirts of the city, the destruction was worse than they expected. Tall buildings lay broken in heaps of stone and metal. The streets were choked with rubble, and burned-out vehicles sat frozen in the middle of the road. The air was thick with dust, making it hard to see more than a short distance ahead. Sophia guided the ship low, weaving between collapsed towers. "We'll set down 3 streets away from the supply route," she said. "Too close and they'll hear us coming." When they landed, the group moved quickly. Their boots crunched on glass and ash as they headed toward their target. Jack led the way, crouching low and scanning every shadow. Claire kept her rifle ready, her eyes never still. They reached a crumbling wall overlooking the supply route. From there, they could see a long line of enemy transports moving through the street below, escorted by armed patrols. Ethan began setting the charges along the wall and on a collapsed overpass nearby. If they timed it right, they could bury the transports under tons of rubble. Jack's voice was low. "Make it quick. They'll be back this way in minutes." Ethan worked fast, attaching the last charge and checking the timer. Claire watched the patrols through her scope, marking each guard's position. Sophia stayed near Jack, her hand on the grip of her sidearm. "What?" When the convoy reached the kill zone, Jack gave the signal. Ethan hit the trigger and the charges erupted in a deafening wave. The overpass crashed down, crushing the lead vehicles. Dust and debris filled the air as shouts and alarms broke out. Claire opened fire, picking off the patrols that tried to regroup. Sophia moved to cover Ethan as he pulled back from the blast site. Jack laid down, suppressing fire, forcing the remaining guards to take cover. The fight was quick and brutal. Within minutes, the convoy was destroyed and the street lay in ruins. They retreated into the shadows before reinforcements could arrive. The sound of distant engines grew louder, and Jack knew they had only moments before the enemy swarmed the area. Back on the ship, they caught their breath. Ethan dropped into his seat, sweat running down his face. "That'll slow them down," he said. "But if there's a queen out there, we can't waste time. We need to find her before they regroup." Claire looked at Jack. "You think she's real?" Jack's jaw tightened. "I think she's our best chance. If she's leading people out here, it means there's more of us than we thought. And if the galaxy sees us fight beside a queen, they'll know we're not a myth anymore." Sophia set a new course. Following the directions the scarred man had given them at the outpost, they would head deeper into the war zone, into territory the enemy believed they controlled. Every mile would be more dangerous than the last, but if the rumors were true, the risk was worth it. As the ship rose above the ruins, Jack looked down at the wreckage they had left behind. The enemy would recover. But now they knew something they hadn't before. Humans were here, and they were not hiding any longer. The ship cut through the night sky, the glow of fires on the ground painting the clouds in shades of orange and red. Jack stood behind Sophia, watching the terrain change as they entered deeper into the war zone. The airspace was dangerous now. Patrol ships crisscrossed the skies, and the sound of distant artillery rolled through the dark like thunder. Ethan sat at the sensor console, scanning for any sign of the stronghold. "Nothing yet," he said, his voice low. "But there are heavy troop movements ahead. They're guarding something." Jack leaned closer. "Then that's where we start looking." Claire was checking her gear again, making sure every magazine was loaded and every strap was tight. "If she's really here," Claire said, "she'll be in the heart of the fight. Leaders don't hide when their people are bleeding." The ship's warning alarm sounded. Sophia banked sharply to avoid a patrol. A sudden movement threw everyone against their seats. "2 ships on our tail," Sophia called out. "They've spotted us." Jack moved to the gun controls and powered up the rear turret. Bright bursts of fire lit up the sky as he aimed at the chasing ships. Ethan fed targeting data to him, and the first enemy craft exploded in a ball of light. The second broke off pursuit, vanishing into the dark. Sophia steadied the ship and dropped them low, flying between the jagged shapes of broken towers. "We're close," she said. "Another mile and we'll be at the coordinates." They landed in the shell of what had once been a large plaza. The buildings around it were shattered, their walls scarred by gunfire. The air was filled with smoke, but through it, they saw movement-armed figures moving with discipline and purpose. Jack raised a hand, signaling the others to stay alert. They advanced slowly, keeping to cover. As they moved deeper into the ruins, the figures became clearer. They wore battered armor, and their banners carried the same crest-to-silver crown over crossed blades. From behind a barricade, a tall man stepped forward, his rifle held but not aimed. "Who are you?" he demanded. Jack lowered his weapon slightly. "We're here to see the Queen." The man studied them for a moment, then motioned for them to follow. They were led through a maze of ruined streets to a fortified hall built from scavenged metal and stone. Guards watched from the walls, their eyes sharp and suspicious. Inside, the hall was lit by burning torches. At its center stood a woman in battle-worn armor, her dark hair pulled back, her gaze steady and cold. She was the Queen, there was no doubt about it. Her presence filled the room, and the soldiers around her straightened as she turned to face the newcomers. "You're not from my forces," she said. Her voice was strong, but there was curiosity in it. Jack stepped forward. "We came from far away. We're human, like you." A murmur ran through the room. Some of the soldiers looked shocked, others skeptical. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Prove it." Jack told her of the hidden colonies, of the scattered survivors who had kept their heritage alive in secret. He spoke of the battles they had fought in the shadows, waiting for the moment to return. As he spoke, the Queen's expression softened, though her voice remained firm. "If you are what you say, then you know what is at stake," she said. "We are surrounded on all sides. Our enemies are strong and relentless. My people fight with everything they have, but without more warriors, we cannot hold this city." Claire stepped forward. "We didn't come here to hide, came to fight." The Queen studied them for another long moment, then nodded. "Then you will fight with us. At dawn, we strike back. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we show them what it means to face humans." As they left the hall, the weight of what lay ahead settled on them. They had found the Queen. Now came the harder part, proving themselves in the fire of battle. The sun had not yet risen, but the city was already alive with movement. Soldiers prepared weapons, tightened armor straps, and checked their positions along the walls. The air was tense, filled with the smell of oil, smoke, and dust. Jack stood on the wall beside the Queen, scanning the streets beyond. In the distance, faint shapes moved through the haze. The enemy was gathering. Ethan crouched near a line of sandbags, laying out extra ammunition. Claire walked between the fighters, giving last-minute instructions. Sophia checked the heavy gun mounted on the eastern wall, making sure it would be ready when the fighting started. "They'll attack from 3 sides," the Queen said, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "They think we will break. We will not." Jack glanced at her. "We've faced worse odds. We'll hold." "Act!" Then the ground began to shake as armored vehicles rolled forward. The enemy soldiers advanced in waves, shouting battle cries that echoed off the ruined buildings. Claire was the first to fire, her rifle cracking sharply in the still morning air. Others followed, and soon the walls blazed with gunfire. Enemy troops fell, but more came, pressing closer with shields and covering fire. Ethan moved between positions, helping fighters reload and shouting warnings when enemy units tried to flank. The Queen directed her guards from the front line, her voice carrying over the noise of battle. She was everywhere, on the walls, in the trenches, rallying the fighters when the line began to falter. A heavy explosion rocked the western wall, throwing stone and metal into the air. Sophia swung the heavy gun toward the breach, cutting down the attackers trying to pour through. Jack grabbed a squad and rushed to reinforce the gap, his rifle steady as he picked off advancing troops. The fighting was brutal. The enemy's numbers seemed endless, but the defenders fought with a fury born from desperation. Every street became a killing ground, every ruined building a fortress. In the middle of the chaos, Claire spotted a group of enemy engineers setting charges at the base of the wall. "They're trying to bring it down," she shouted. Without waiting for orders, she sprinted across open ground, bullets tearing the dirt around her. She cut them down before they could finish their work, then dove behind cover as another wave of troops surged forward. The Queen joined Jack at the western breach, her sword flashing in the light as she cut down anyone who came too close. Jack fought beside her. The two of them holding the line while Sophia's gunfire tore into the enemy ranks. Ethan appeared with news. Their supply unit is in the alley to the south. If we take it out, they'll be forced to pull back. Jack nodded. Do it. Take Claire with you. They slipped away through the side streets, moving fast and silent. The supply unit was lightly guarded, the soldiers too focused on the main battle. Ethan planted explosives on the fuel trucks while Claire covered him. The moment the charges went off, a fireball lit the sky, followed by a deep roar. Enemy troops shouted in panic, their formation breaking as smoke and flames consumed their supplies. Back at the wall, the Queen saw the confusion and seized the moment. "Push them back," she shouted. The defenders surged forward, driving the enemy out of the streets and into the open fields beyond. The fighting dragged on for another hour before the last enemy unit withdrew. The city was still standing, though its walls were scarred and broken in places. Bodies lay where they had fallen, the streets marked by the heavy cost of survival. Jack stood with the Queen in the aftermath, watching the wounded being carried to safety. "We held," he said quietly. "Yes," she replied, "but this is only the beginning. They will return, and next time they will come in greater force." Sophia approached, wiping dust from her face. "Then we'll be ready." Ethan and Claire joined them, both exhausted but alive. For the first time since arriving, Jack allowed himself a small smile. They had fought beside the Queen, and they had not broken. The myth of humans was no longer a story, it was now a warning to anyone who dared to face them. The city was quiet after the battle, but it was the kind of quiet that came only from exhaustion. Smoke still rose from parts of the walls, and the streets were lined with rubble. The defenders moved slowly, carrying the wounded, gathering weapons, and clearing the dead. The sun had climbed high, but the air still felt heavy with the memory of the fight. Jack walked the length of the wall, checking on the fighters. Many of them had fresh bandages and hollow eyes, but they stood tall when he passed. They knew they had achieved something few thought possible. They had held against a force that should have crushed them. Ethan was helping repair one of the gates, his hands black with soot. "This won't hold long," he said when Jack approached. "We need stronger defenses before they come back." Jack nodded. "We'll get them. The fight yesterday will give us time, but not much." In the main hall, the Queen met with her captains. Maps covered the long table, marked with enemy positions and supply routes. Claire stood beside her, pointing to a section of the map far to the east. "If we take this ridge," Claire said, "we can see their movements for miles. It'll give us the advantage when they return." The Queen listened, then turned to Jack. "We can't stay hidden anymore. The enemy now knows we are human, and they will want to crush us before the rest of the galaxy sees us. If we want to survive, we must make sure the galaxy does see us." Jack understood. For centuries, humans had been a story told in the shadows. Now, they would show the truth openly. Sophia entered, carrying a small comm device. "We've picked up signals from other settlements," she said. "They heard about the battle. They want to know if it's true." "Tell them it's true," the Queen said without hesitation. "Tell them to come." By nightfall, small groups began arriving at the city. Men and women in worn armor, carrying whatever weapons they could find. They came from distant ruins, hidden valleys, and abandoned stations. Many of them had thought they were the last of their kind. Now, they saw the banners of the crown flying over the city and knew they were not alone. Ethan watched them gather in the plaza. "This is bigger than the battle," he said quietly. "This is the start of something." Jack stood beside him. "It's the start of everything." The next morning, the Queen addressed the gathered crowd. Her voice carried over the stone square, steady and strong. "The enemy thinks we are a dying people," she said. "They think they can break us and erase our name. They are wrong. We are human. We have fought in the dark for generations, but no more. Today, we step into the light. Today, the galaxy will remember who we are." Cheers rose from the crowd, echoing off the walls. The sound was fierce, filled with the pride of a people who had been silent for too long. Jack, Claire, Ethan, and Sophia stood near the front, their weapons at their sides. They knew the war was far from over. The enemy would return with more soldiers, more machines, and more fury. But now, they would face not a scattered few, but a united force. Scouts reported that the enemy was already regrouping, building new lines and calling in reinforcements. It would be only days before they struck again. The city prepared as best it could, turning every street into a barricade and every rooftop into a firing point. On the eve of the next battle, Jack looked out over the walls. Fires burned in the distance where the enemy was camped. Behind him, the people of the city stood ready, their eyes sharp and unafraid. Claire joined him on the wall. "You ever think we'd see this day?" Jack shook his head. "Didn't think we'd live long enough. But now we're here, and we're not going anywhere." As the night deepened, the Queen walked the wall, speaking to each fighter. When she reached Jack's group, she looked out at the enemy camp and smiled faintly. "Tomorrow," she said, "they learn that the myth is over." And when dawn came, the humans marched out of the gates. Not as shadows or whispers, but as a force the galaxy could no longer deny.